All right, I'm being joined now by two gentlemen who are in the education sector. I have joining me virtually Jimmy Oko. Jimmy Oko is an economist and a lecturer with the Shaka Momodu Polytechnic here in Benin City. Good afternoon, Jimmy, and good to have you.
Good afternoon, my dear brother. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good afternoon to our dear viewers.
All right. Okay, joining me in the studio here is Oladele Ogundele. Oladele Ogundele is an educationist as well, someone who is into private schools, who understand how the teaching and the learning process goes with both at the primary, secondary level. Good afternoon, Oladele. Good to have you. We're here again to discuss. Yeah. We're here again to discuss this topic, more like for the part two. Yes. Okay, let me begin with you, Jimmy Oko. You are in the tertiary level. Would you say, you heard me read the preamble, one of them says, a country without education cannot be imagined. So it means that education itself drives a country, drives a nation, drives a state, everybody. What would you, as someone in the tertiary institution, says education is and education is not?
All right. So thank you very much, my brother. I think it is there's no guessing in the fact that education is the actual thing that prepares the society for any meaningful development. Right from when anybody, any human being is born into this world, education is the thing that takes you from day one to meeting the potentials, to even knowing the objectives of your life. Education is the one to design ways to achieve your potential. It is education. So education is actually the bedrock for any meaningful development in society. A country without education can never progress, can never know growth. If you look at countries around the world, you'll find out the similarity between the priority placed on education and the level of economic development that is attained. Because at the end of the day, economic development is a full reflection of how much priority has been invested into the educational sector. Because the truth is, there's nothing that comes by magic. It's not by miracle. We do not change the fortunes of any country by miracle. We cannot change the economic development overnight. It is procedural, and the procedures, they are anchored on systems, on processes, they are anchored on theories, they are anchored on reasonings. And all of these reasonings are what the education process, the state of education will open up. So the human brain, because all development you talk about in society, they are a result of what people have thought about. They are a result of the thoughts that goes on in the brain. So it is education that prepares the brain to do this kind of critical thinking. You understand that economic development we talk about is a solution to human problems. So providing human problems, what you call economic development. So it's about sitting down to think about the ways to aspire, the ways to achieve what has been aspired. All of these ones, that's education. So education, as I said, is the bedrock for any meaningful development. So without education, there is no development, there is no growth. So education, for those who actually want economic development, it is never too late to realize that education is the number one thing to embrace. Because the truth is that anybody that is not educated, any city that is not educated, any country that is not has not placed that much priority on education is actually like that child that is born, who after 5 years still cannot walk, cannot breathe, cannot do anything. And you know the meaning of that? That child is actually dead, even at birth.
All right. Thank you very much, Jimmy Oko, for your insights on that. Let me now come to my guest here in the studio. We had this conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, no, you were the only one I had on this program. So I had to, I told you that we're going to have a part two sort of, and that's what we're doing now. And I had to bring in someone in the tertiary sector to throw more light, to combine with you guys in the primary and secondary sector, so we get a more better picture. From your angle, A line here said, a country without education cannot be imagined. Could we now say that education goes beyond the paper in itself?
Yes.
The degrees you get or the certificates
Yes.
you get? Okay.
Yes. Education, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And it interests me that you're bringing this topic to a business program.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you cannot separate the way a person do business, from the content,
yeah.
of the
knowledge they
skills
have.
and the knowledge
Yeah.
he or she possesses.
That's true.
Has. You can't. Of course, the level with which you do things and exhibit things,
Yeah.
it's a matter of your exposure.
Okay.
When it comes to education.
Yeah.
And like I said before, it is the acquisition of skills for the betterment of the society.
Okay.
And it goes beyond paper.
Yeah.
Paper could be a formality.
Okay.
Paper could be served as an identity,
Yeah.
that you've acquired such and such and such. In Nigeria today, we have so much uneducated persons with paper.
With the papers.
Yes, with
Okay.
papers.
Okay.
Because they don't have the required skills. They don't have the prerequisites. They don't have the information inside with which they actually better the society.
It's like the saying
It's
that
quite
it's like the
unfortunate.
saying that you went through school, but the school did
The
not
school didn't go through you.
That is a
Yes,
general saying that
yes,
people use.
and it's a failure of the government. It's
Okay.
a failure of the system. In your intro, you mentioned that literacy rate is 59 or 50 something
Yes,
percent.
59%.
And we're talking about literacy.
Literacy.
That is basic education. We have never that is basic education is
Just to read and write,
numeracy
knowing how
and
to read
literacy.
and write, yeah.
So we are talking about basic education, and we're having such.
Yeah.
In Nigeria today, we have over 18 million out of school children in the most populous black nation in the world.
In the world and in Africa.
The giant of
Africa.
Africa.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it shows that we really need to do something and know that beyond the papers we carried about,
Okay.
these skills needs to be passed across to people.
Okay.
Needs to also, if you check our GDP, if you check our economic activities,
Yeah.
if you check our prosperity, if you check our economic status and economic healthiness as a nation,
Yeah.
you will discover that we are not healthy. And it traces it is to the education.
education sector.
Yes, like what the other man said, that it is the bedrock, it is the major
Of every society.
of everything. It is with which a man advances to even fulfill. You can't fulfill purpose without education. You can't fulfill purpose. So you can imagine how many persons in Nigeria that you've had today that how many our nation, how many children, how many adults that because of the nation, the system with which we run our education system has deprived from fulfilling their purpose on earth.
because they are not educated.
Yeah, well, they are not educated.
Okay, it's a conversation that have started, but we need to go on a short break for the headline news at 2 p.m. After the break, we'll continue more on the conversation. Stay with us and go nowhere. All right, thank you for staying with us. We're still moving on the program, and I'm still have my guest, Jimmy Oko and Oladele Ogundele, taking a look at the education sector, a key to economic growth and development. Now, Jimmy, the next question will be for you. From the preamble I read, you heard me at the last part that UNESCO's proposition is 26% of average budget. So when a nation is setting their budget, they should benchmark 26% out of that budget for education. But in Nigeria over the years, we've seen 5%, 6%. The highest I have here is 7%. And that was in the year 2021. This is 2025. Do you think the government of the day, whether the federal, the state, they are playing, I don't want to, the word ringing in my head, I don't want to use it, like they are not taking education serious from your own perspective as a lecturer in a tertiary institution?
All right, thank you very much. I think everybody in Nigeria, with all due respect, I think everybody in Nigeria understands or accept the fact that our government has no priority for education. They have no importance for it. They've not demonstrated it anytime, and there's no any semblance that they are ready to do so in the nearest future. And if you look, the benchmark as set by UNESCO, 26% is fine. You know, the body only looked at what the minimum percentage of total budget of the country that should be spent on education to enable the country, to enable that country do well in the area of education without compromising the future. This is because at the end, all the aspect of the budget you talk about, they are all about building this, building that, all that. But the guarantee, the assurance which the budget of a country generates about the future is the segment that is directed on education. Education is the only assurance that we have that while we are pursuing the standard of today, while we are trying to better our laws for today, while we are trying to make prices well controlled, control inflation, produce things for our people today, that the future is yet not compromised. That is education. Education pointing us today and giving and stretching towards the future to tell us, yes, even as we are achieving this today, tomorrow is still going to be better. It's the only way. That is the only aspect of the budget that tells us that. But in Nigeria, the UNESCO's proposition has never been made. 26% have been too big for our own government to achieve our budget directed at education. But that's not even the issue. The paltry fraction that the government has always set out for education in the budget. What is the implementation? How much of it is implemented? How much of it end up in the education sector? Nobody talks about that. Every now and then you see, if you go to our basic school, primary and secondary schools, they are all in sorry states. No country, as a matter of fact, we are far behind. And nobody wants to talk about the standard of education that is available for these children who are growing up tomorrow to take up the responsibility tomorrow. Because it is only through education that you can prepare these people to drive our economy for tomorrow. This person, if we do not look at our basic education, we will only allow our very little children to go through processes where they will become incapable tomorrow. And at the end of the day, we start regretting that we have people who have gone to school but yet they are not, like my colleague said over there, that some persons will have the papers but yet are not properly educated. It shows the quality that we have invested into the sector. It shows the commitment which those in the government have invested into the sector. It shows their own understanding of the concept of education itself. If you look at the higher education in the country, look at it. What is happening? Every now and then you see what even those in the sector agitate here and there. They want to go on strike today, tomorrow, always. And at the end of the day, you see government bringing politics with these people, do some politics, lobby them to go back to the classroom. The same agitation, the same target, the same requirement, the same requisition will never be attended to in decades. So if you just look at the history of Nigeria, what lecturers, the academics protested about, what they went on strike about in the 80s, they are still questioned today that people are asking. You have not provided this, you've not provided that. Go to our schools, they are in sorry states because the world we now live in is requiring so much more skills from people for you to be able to thrive in the area of economy, the global economy, because right now we're talking about globalization. It's a concept, globalization. In other words, if you are not strong, those who are strong will take advantage of it. That's the concept of globalization. As part of your intro, I heard you mention BRIC, Nigeria joining BRIC. That is, all of these associations, they enable unity in international trade. They give opportunity equally to all countries. Only the strong will take advantage of that, and the weak will forever be weak. So the only way we can be sure that we are going to take those opportunities that come with globalization is to strengthen our education sector, because the next player of our economy, those who are going to dictate the economy tomorrow, those who are going to drive the economic sector of Nigeria tomorrow, they are still within the four walls of the classroom. They are still being prepared. So at the
Okay.
end of the day, what it shows is that those in our politics, our leaders, do not have any priority for education. They do not see the concept as important thing. And that is not far from the truth, my brother. The truth which remains that in Nigeria, we have only allowed, over the years, we allow those who are truly educated to remain at the background, while those who refuse to learn, who refuse to be educated, to be properly educated, they are the ones making the policies. At the end of the day, they don't say the need.
Okay.
You look at it, a situation where somebody will be contesting election,
Jimmy, let me pause you a while there. Let me get the opinion of my guest here in the studio. If it differs from yours, you heard his opinion about 26%, but the highest we've allocated is 7%. That's like 19% extra at the back.
Oh.
Do you think we're on the right path?
We are not.
Okay.
We are not.
Why did you say so?
We are not. And there is no sign that
We are heading towards the right path.
There is no will
Okay.
that we want to be.
Okay.
If benchmark of UNESCO,
Yeah, it's 26%.
it's 26.
We're doing just 7.
We're doing
The
7.
highest we've done,
So
not like
far.
we're doing 7. The
In the
highest
past,
we've
we've
done
had
so far.
5.
Yeah, 5.
We are
6.
not.
Okay.
It is that is a very pathetic state.
Okay.
And like I said, we are not even showing sign that we want to
We're
go there.
heading toward.
Let me give an example.
Okay.
Universal basic education,
Yeah.
which states that from compulsory and free education from primary to
Secondary.
J3.
Okay. That's junior secondary
Yes,
level.
compulsory and free.
So by all means, the government should make sure that every child should be
Within
in
this
school,
range, should be
within
in
this
school.
range, from primary to
To
junior
J3.
secondary. By all means.
By all means.
Whether the family is rich or poor.
Once you
they
are
should
born into the society,
society.
by the policy,
Yeah, you
you're
should be in
supposed to.
school.
And this is funded by a percentage from our oil derivation.
Absolutely true.
Constantly to be flowing there.
Yeah.
Where is the fund?
Okay.
Where you beg? Dude, they say they are doing a lot. But the point is that it's not producing what we're looking for.
Okay. So what should it produce?
Now, it's supposed to be that, yes, we are seeing the result. One, we should not see children as much as that number out of school.
Okay.
Two, now let me tell you what Nigeria, what's the government have done. They've left this education, as well as basic education, in the hand of the rich, in the sense that they've given it to private, and from the private sector,
Yeah.
like I always
said
tell you.
the other
Yes.
time.
Now, the issue now is that if you leave this education in the hands of the private,
Yeah.
the private becomes a capitalist
Capitalist society, where all they are after is to
and
make
education
money.
is supposed to be a social service.
Okay.
Now, what may happen is they charge the people, and if you can't afford it, you stay at home.
stay at home.
Government schools that are supposed to be free and compulsory are not evenly distributed, are not available. Communities are developing, and there are no government schools. The one that we have dilapidated structures. The one that we don't have enough
Manpower, that's teachers
human
and
resource,
everything needed.
that can handle them. So unfortunately, we're in this state. And let me quickly tell you that if we're not meeting up with the UNESCO standard, or even if we're not meeting up with exactly
up to the 26%,
that,
let's be doing 20%, 21, 22.
I won't, let me even say 15. There will be a great thing. Then let me say something in agreement to what he said.
Yeah.
So much money, even the 7%, like what he said, even the 7% that we're talking about, is not even utilized. Let us assume that it's utilized. Before it does it get to the right source? Does it do what it's meant for? We have some fantastic policy, but has it implemented? No. There is a policy on education that states that what we call disarticulation policy on education, where J1 primary 1 it was enacted in 2005 or so by UB education policy.
Yeah, policies.
From primary 1 to J3 should be in one school. But today we still have primary 1 to 6 separate, while J1 to 3 separate.
So that's the one they did that time. That's supposed to be 9 years.
9 years,
okay. I can remember that policy.
Yes. So that by the time you are out, you can decide to even go and acquire skills. Yes. You are sound literally, and in numeracy you are very okay. So now that's where we're having the challenge. Now once we don't get a basic education right, we will continue to have this problem. We will continue to have this problem.
So we have to get the basic right before we now start talking about
the
Secondary,
tertiary,
tertiary level.
Like when he mentioned about this university strike, the same
Which has been
complaint.
there since the
It has been,
1970s.
we are not used to it.
So it's just like a normal thing.
It's not a normal thing. The same thing, what they ask for. Do you know that if you go back to your secondary school, it has reduced? If it's not private school, if you go back, if it's a government school,
Yeah, if
you
it's
get
a
there,
government
it has
school, actually,
it has
yeah,
good.
it has reduced, yeah, in terms
What
of-
I mean, all infrastructure decay. I went to my own
True.
many years ago. I drove home and I drove my children, and they were like, "Daddy, you are
This is the school you came out from."
And I saw window everything. I said, "What? Where are we going?"
Okay.
So, sincerely speaking, we should have the will to really take this sector so that we can boost our economy.
Okay.
If you don't get it right,
In
forget
education.
economy. It is human that run economy.
That runs the economy,
It is
absolutely.
human that is skilled, that is equipped, that has resources imputed into them, that runs the economy.
Okay.
So if we don't get it right, and let me tell you, Nigeria is so blessed.
Yeah.
Whenever you see population, there is money. And we are blessed with all resources. Our lecturers, our doctors, our education experts, they are traveling abroad to excel, to do things, to innovate things, to bring things to bear. These are the skills that we're supposed to harness here in Nigeria. The last thing I want to say is that, do you know, like what he said, that the first class, the second class, they are the citizens, they work in places. The third class, those boys that we used to classify them as
just give you the certificate, let it go.
They are the one
running the things now.
So they are the one the power,
making the decision, whether good or bad.
Are we going to get it?
Okay.
Are we going to get it?
I get that clearly.
We cannot.
Okay.
By the time those are the people that now ruling us,
policies.
it's very, very
as
unfair.
against the person who are the first class, you're supposed to be making the policies.
Supposed to make it policy. You are not making
properly.
policy on top of on them. You see somebody who cannot even read and is presiding over professors, and is determining their salary, is determining that this thing. How is it going to prosper? It can't be.
All right, Jimmy, let's talk about funding now as we begin to wrap up. Do you think that more funds need to be allocated both at the primary, secondary, tertiary levels in terms of in order to get the required results? Because when you go to every institution today, especially the tertiary institution where you belong, government owned, everything you hear every day is funding, money from TED fund, money from all the funds that are in the university sector is not enough. And it seems like nobody is paying attention to that aspect. Let's talk about the funding. Do you think more funds need to be allocated, both for infrastructure and even the human capital in the system?
All right, like I said earlier, only with education, we can demonstrate our readiness to have our future not compromised while we are battling to achieve the best economic status today. So there is nothing that can be too much to invest in a sector that assures you of tomorrow. So the Nigerian government is known for lackadaisical attitude, for reluctance, whether from basic or in tertiary education sector. It has always been like that. It is not, there's no doubt at all that the education sector in Nigeria needs so much funding. If you look at a government that wants to try to demonstrate a little of such understanding, it was the government led by Goodluck Ebele Jonathan while he was president, who tried to revamp the activities of a tech fund from the old petroleum trust fund or something. And since that time, the activities of that body was able to make a significant impact in the area of tertiary education. But the only thing is how much is the government of today driving that body? And it shouldn't also only be that. My dear brother, are you aware that every company in Nigeria, every registered company in Nigeria, at the point they make payments, they remit their taxes to the tax bodies in Nigeria, there is a certain percentage of the 3%, 3.5%, which they remit to the government, and that money is set aside to help develop tertiary education. It should not stop construction of road on all of those ones now. Is the government allowing this fund to go straight to help our tertiary institutions? Is the government allowing that? That is to say, if and that shouldn't even be the only way. There are different other ways to help to fund the education sector. In the area of facilities, because these students you train, they are the ones you expect to come tomorrow to build the industry, to build the technology, to help design all the things that you admire about London, America, and all of that. So if you want these people to bring the such height of technological advancement, of economic development to the country when it is their time, you should invest so much to expose them to what you are going to expect from them in the future. Because it is a mind that learns, that is a mind that truly knows. If a mind, you've not prepared a mind to actually learn something, then you cannot expect that mind is going to know what to do in the near future to secure our economy in the near future. Basic education is another thing. Like my colleague said over there, I agree 100% that if a person is giving proper basic education, I tell you 50% of the problem has been solved. But the problem is our basic education is nowhere. Nowhere. Right from funding, if you look at it, the dilapidation in schools without teachers. At this era, we are looking at the future that has a blossoming economy, and yet we still have schools in our states, in our different areas that do not have teachers, and there are so many people who are ready to teach outside. The government cannot employ teachers.
Okay.
And when you get the facilities, nowhere. Yeah. They're all in solid state.
Okay.
So much funding is needed, and the government must realize that funding education is like funding the future. So without funding for education, you are jeopardizing the future of the entire country.
Begin to wrap up now. Let me get your parting shot before we go. But it seems like what he said seems to be his parting shot. He has said so much. So let me get your parting shot before we go.
There is no amount of money that
can be expended in
education as a waste.
Okay.
There is no amount.
All right.
As a person, I can go extra while. I remember when I was in secondary school, and my mother sold her wrappers to make sure that I have basic education. Fees. Yes, I wanted to ride my bike then. Yeah. Are you getting it now?
Yeah.
Today I've decided I can sell my car, I can sell my property
for your children,
to give my children the best education. Because I asked a question: if Barack Obama was to be born in Nigeria, will he have still become American
president of America?
Okay. These are the things that our leaders should ask themselves. Our parents should ask themselves.
All right.
Why, if there are, how many lives and how many potentials, how many futures we have jeopardized because we don't pay proper attention and funding to education, just to develop human, because that's our role. We develop them, they will strive in the society, they will be a benefit to us, they will be a benefit to the society, they will fulfill destiny, and they will become better, and the society will also enjoy their presence.
Thank you.
Parents and our government really need to know that funding education is paramount and is so important.
Thank you very much, Oladele Ogundele, for your time. Thank you so much, Jimmy Oko, for joining us on the show this afternoon. We appreciate you for your time and your insight into the topic we've looked into. Thank you so much. All right, that's the size of our package on the show this afternoon. It's been a great time taking a look at education, and we hope that the authorities concerned, the government at all levels, federal, state, and local, should invest more in education, because education is indeed the power of the mind. That's the size of our package this afternoon. I am Lawrence Osifo, thanking you for watching. Bye for now.